Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Unbridled Equestrian Podcast. Today we have the lovely Alexa Linton joining us. Alexa and I finally had the pleasure of meeting after many years of crossing paths. Now, Alexa has a really cool background. She is the host of the Whole Horse Podcast, now on its 7th season.
Ninth, actually.
9th! Oh
Yeah.
my gosh!
hmm
Okay, that's incredible. I don't know why I thought it was 7th.
Probably written somewhere, not updated.
It's hard to keep everything updated, isn't it? So now in its 9th season, as well as the founder of the Whole Horse Collective. And I know we're going to dig in a little bit today about your program Outside of the Box Equine as well. And Alexa is also an author of Death Sucks. So this is a guide of how to deal with the death or passing of our beloved animals. So I'm really excited to chat with you, and I'm so grateful that you could join us, Alexa. This is the first episode of our podcast swap, so I will also be on your podcast coming up soon. And please excuse my voice. I've been sick and on the mend, but you'll have to bear with me because I know I still sound a little bit froggy. But thank you so much for being here, Alexa.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yes, the pleasure is all mine. Well, I'm so excited to dig in. And because we're sort of embarking on a new year, I would love to just start out with what is feeling top of mind or most exciting for you as we head into 2026.
Oh, it's a big question. For some of you, you may know that last year, one of my biggest dreams ever came true, which is landing on our own property, myself and my partner Patrick, with our horses. I've been with my mare Diva 22 years, coming up 23, and that's been sort of a dream of mine since we came together a long time ago in Victoria. And yeah, bringing her home and having a spot where she could live the final years of her life out. And then with that, of course, over the years, I've added Raven to my herd and Gwynna, who's a Shetland mini cross, and most recently, my gelding Raycure. So we're now at 4, 3.5, but I don't call Gwynna a half because she gets very upset. So 4. And this year, it's an interesting year for me. I've moved away. Sorry, everybody, for the chihuahua in the background. I've moved away.
Part of the action.
Yeah, I know, from some of the more riding pursuits, just in this more time, because my Diva is now 26 and she's officially retired, and my other horses are, I tend to attract ones with some health challenges. And then Gwynna is 40 inches. So we are not a riding pair, as you can imagine, but we are working towards. So that's one of my exciting things, is we are learning to drive a cart. And my hope as well this winter is potentially dabbling in ski joring with her. So I've been gathering my equipment as a possibility because our new property in the Cowichan here borders the Cowichan Valley Trail. So it's like the perfect spot for something like ski joring. That's on my bucket list as well. And it's been an interesting time because it's that sense of leaning into, okay, what does it mean to be on our own property, to be able to offer things from this space and create sort of a retreat spot for people to come and learn and deepen their relationship with horses and themselves. So that's really something I'm thinking a lot about right now. I've always, for the last chunk of years, offered a whole horse apprenticeship or whole horse collective retreat every summer, which is just for my program and mentorship participants. So this year I hope to, take that out a step and get back to offering some more workshops, some more learning opportunities.
Wonderful.
Totally.
So many exciting things on the go. And it's really incredible. I had the pleasure of visiting Alexa's farm and new facility. And it's just so wonderful to see everything that you're doing with the property and all the opportunities that it's going to open up for your business and for other people to come and learn from you. So
well, it was so fun doing the track tours because I definitely will be doing that again. And some of you may know that I'm just absolutely geeky about equine habitat. So we've been really having a lot of fun creating on a very, a small piece of land. The horses probably have about 2 acres of the land. And in that, we've created multiple track loops, multiple covered spaces, feeding zones, and enrichment opportunities. That is something that I'm extremely passionate about as well, as you know, and hoping to continue to develop into like fun obstacles and permaculture practices and regenerative agriculture, lots of things that are like adding to the health and well-being of the horses and the land, and hopefully ourselves eventually as well, with gardens and things. So a very win-win, hopefully, situation that we're working towards. Which,
so you were just telling us about the loop that you've created.
Most recently, we created an upper track loop, which I get inordinately excited about. Like, I'm sure people are like, what are you talking about? But it's got like a sand pile and it's got hills and a view, and I love it. So, and the horses love it as well, and it's really cute to see them napping. So I'm in a real like moment of just observing and being curious and seeing what wants to unfold at this point. And I know you chatted about the Whole Horse Collective. That's really one of my most exciting projects this year. It's my first ever true kind of membership program. In the past, I've done sort of 6 months programs and other layouts of learning experiences, but this is the first one that's really going to be an all the time thing. And I'm really interested to see where that goes, essentially.
Absolutely, as am I, and we still need to talk about that because it's something that I'm so interested in. I feel like the more we chat, and really the more I chat with anyone who's really into equine welfare and digging into what's best for horses, I just keep learning so much, and it's just incredible. And so a huge part of having you here, I would love to dig into that. And maybe even to start, we can give a little bit of information to anybody who's not familiar with you and your work, of your background in equine body work. I know you had mentioned that you were doing equine massage for quite some time, and that became really difficult, seeing horses time and time again whose needs just weren't being met, and then having sort of a realization that you maybe needed a shift into something bigger. So could you share a little bit about that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I actually graduated from the BC College of Equine Therapy in 2005, so 20 plus years ago, which is kind of nutty. I built actually in Victoria and beyond, built a equine therapy business. At the time, there wasn't too many of us, as you might imagine, doing that sort of work. And I really, really enjoyed learning and meeting people and working with horses on that level. Very much at the same time, I met Diva. So it was quite synchronous. And the schooling sort of really shifted my mindset, thank goodness, away from a more, traditional dominance-based methods, and slowly but surely into what does it look like to change this up, the ways that I've learned to be with horses that just are not working for me with this horse and in this relationship and in the way that I want. Those two things sort of paralleled each other. I worked as an equine therapist by majority up until about, I guess it would be like 4 or 5 years ago. I was doing quite a bit of that work, and then started to slowly shift over. I finished my training in osteopathy in 2021, and that's human osteopathy. I started to build my practice and work more from home, and really shifting the way that I felt compelled to work. Now, the other thing about equine therapy is, as you know from your work, it's a ton of traveling, and there's a stress to that's not always talked about, as like the traveling and the being on the road and eating on the road and being away from home for huge chunks of time. And I found that just became really not a sustainable path for me in particular. And a part of that was I had a health event, 3.5 years ago that made that impossible. Part of it was having this other practice that I could step into that was much more workable and sustainable for me. But then the other side of it was what I shared with you previously, which was that I felt the momentum shift away from working with horses because so many of them, there wasn't the bigger changes happening that would actually change what was going on for them for the long term. It was a lot of patchwork and a lot of duct tape and a lot of like trying to make a little thing better. That kind of image of plugging it down with bubble gum is like, okay, like I'm not really actually doing anything because the environment that they're existing in isn't actually changing anything for them. And when you keep going out and seeing the same thing over and over and over again with a horse, it just gets kind of like, ugh, not inspiring anymore, right? Not rewarding. And so that was when I started to really shift. Okay, what are the bigger pieces that need to be addressed here? And as we know, living on the West Coast here, horse habitat and horse care has been influenced, I would say, by a few different things. One being the fact that we live in the Pacific Northwest. It is so wet and rainy and muddy. So there's a certain way of keeping horses that has, I would say, to an extent worked for people, which is flat paddocks, aggregate, keeping horses separate. Like, do you know what I mean? Like this sort of cookie cutter, like, okay, this is how we keep horses because they're not then standing in mud all day long and, right, ripping up our fields and doing all those things. So, I mean, I don't have to tell you how hard it is to find group turnout board here or on the lower mainland. It's like almost impossible. I have people ask me all the time about like, are you going to board horses at your place? It's just not available for the majority of people. I have a mare, Diva was a mare that needed herd turnout 24/7 all year round. That is a big, it's the top priority for her in terms of her health and well-being. And so when I started to kind of like look around and be like, okay, well, I can get her pasture board in the summer some places, but that ends in September or October, and then we're in this chunk of time where that's just not an option for us generally, right? So that really got me curious about what are the ways that we can keep horses sustainably in herd turnout that support the land, support the horses, support the people, right? Hence the semi-obsession with track systems and paddock paradise.
I love it. There's just so much more knowledge being shared now and so much more information coming out about the importance of these pieces. I think more awareness around the impact of horses not having their core needs met. It really is forcing, I think, the community and the industry as a whole to start reassessing how we've looked at things for so long and challenge the notions or the preconceived ideas that we have around why we do what we do. Because I think for so long we've been able to justify, oh, well, it's fine and this is just normal and this just works. But when we're starting to see how much it really doesn't work for anybody, because the reality is it's not working for the people either. Sure, we're not standing in mud. The behavioral issues, all of the health issues, the mental issues that the horses are having, those become horse owner or rider issues as well. And so when you're on your third round of ulcer treatment and your horse is still not getting better and you're stressed and you're paying all this money and you've got the vet bills and everything starts to compound, it doesn't take long before we're like, okay, is this working? I don't think so. The nice thing is with the track systems and with all of the information that's becoming more readily available, I think it's easier for us to find solutions that can work and to start getting creative without it feeling maybe so scary. And
Absolutely.
I love how you're approaching that with the Whole Horse Collective as well as your course. With Outside of the Box Equine, I know you deal with sort of species specific care and keeping horses in the ways that they need to be kept. Can you tell us a little bit more about why environment is so crucial and how it can really support training and other therapeutic endeavors that we might be seeking to improve for our horses?
Yeah, absolutely. So just to give you a sense, Outside the Box Equine is a website that's a big umbrella for essentially horse care. So the Whole Horse Collective lives under there. My course on building a track system lives under there. My course on kinetic communication, which is all about applied kinesiology as a form of communication with our horses to get a sense of what they're needing, and Redefining Equine, which is a course that I built a while back on repairing and rewriting our story with horses. Because oftentimes a part of it is we're kind of stuck in these particular traditions or narratives or patterns. And it's like, well, I've always done it this way. And to make a change would mean all these things, and stress. It would be more stressful to do that than to like not make a change. So we're just going to stay this way. So all of those things are nested under Outside the Box Equine, including a guest instructor course by Nicole Jory, a hoof care fundamentals course, which is incredibly comprehensive. My goal with all of that is, and eventually I've envisioned products and all sorts of fun things that are going to be under that umbrella, because I am so passionate about these shifts that could be happening in our horse world. And I do honestly see more and more kind of people going, oh, that's interesting. Oh, I'm very curious about that. And I love that. It's like even if you're just kind of popping a toe in, that's like something, right? Even if you're listening to this podcast and have just like a bit of curiosity happening, that's awesome, because it can take a while to change. And you know, maybe you need to find the right inspiration or the right motivation to do so, to make a shift. Here's what I've realized though over the years. I definitely am sort of on the one end of the spectrum, doing the whole thing. And I'm doing that on purpose because I want to give people sort of a sense of what's possible, especially in our climate. I'm on a forested property. It's quite wet. We're in a rain and snow belt. Yeah, it's sort of very Pacific Northwest, I would say, in terms of like a situation. And yet there's a lot of spaces and places and different things for my horses to do. What I'm seeing more and more is that there's a lot of ways to add enrichment and shifts into our horses' lives that are promoting well-being, that don't necessarily mean you have to like join me at that end of things. You don't have to do the whole thing, but even by addressing some of the more base environmental needs, whether that's shifting your understanding around forage and going, okay, like my horse cannot go more than 4 hours without feed in front of them. Even that. It's like, okay, great. That helps with things like ulcers, digestive issues, and stress levels already. And if we then consider, okay, let's talk about herd dynamics. So maybe my horse can't be in with other horses in their particular boarding situation. What would it look like to, number one, ensure that they're beside a friend that they really enjoy spending time with, right? And that is a priority, that friend, that they're not moved around paddocks, that there's consistency, there's some routine, and that they can find some connection somehow. Sometimes that's even as much as like take that top electric fence down and let your horses touch each other, please, please. They are community-based animals, and any way that we can increase connection with their community is supportive to their well-being on levels that you will not even comprehend. I watch my guys and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much happening that I don't even realize between all of them. So much communication occurring all the time. So if we can let them touch, especially if we can let them be together, my goodness, what an amazing thing to be able to offer in a safe way. And so those are things that are really important. And then anything that increases movement, anything at all that increases movement and enrichment is like, yes, please, a check mark, right? So it's like, if I can have multiple hay bags in their feeding area that they can move around, even a smaller paddock, and have multiple places to be eating and having food enrichment, grand. If I can make sure that their water bucket's just a little bit away from their feed, and maybe I can add another water bucket that has something fun in it, like I always have salt water out for my horses. A bucket with water, go to Costco, get some salt, put it in the water. Bam, here we are. Right. I always have one as well. Raven loves apple cider vinegar in her water. So like a 1/4 cup of apple cider vinegar in like a regular water bucket. Amazing. It means they're drinking more. Always good to have more hydration. And they get choice. They can decide. So those sorts of things, they're easy. They make a lot of difference. Adding some obstacles or some branches or some logs to the paddock, you know, stuff like that. It's not hard, but sometimes it takes just a little bit of a shift, because when I say that last one, people are like, what if they trip? And I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay. I'm sorry, but like they're a horse. So if they trip, we have bigger issues at hand, like lack of proprioception, because obviously they have not had obstacles or anything in their path. But ideally, they will learn to lift their feet, they will figure it out. And the more that we can actually give variation in the footing and the terrain with obstacles, the better for their injury prevention. It means that they have to think about where they're going rather than just having flat ground with nothing on it, that they can kind of zone out. They don't have to think about where their feet are landing or what they're doing. So even to have a sand pile somewhere or a different footing somewhere, God forbid some mud. I always like mud in a paddock. Keep some mud, everybody.
It's easy to do
Keep
here.
some mud. Those sorts of things can like really make a big difference. Not just for their well-being, just generally, but also under saddle. If you're someone who likes to trail ride, put obstacles in your paddock. Change the footing in your paddock or your area, because it will actually improve their ability and their confidence on trail rides, because they're actually doing the things that they would be doing out, stepping over roots, stepping on different terrains, stepping in different footing. Those sorts of things are important for just building their general confidence, their proprioception, their abilities, their capacity, right? Yeah.
And even for our hunter jumpers or our dressage horses. I mean,
especially for, yes.
right?
Yeah.
I feel like we see so much kind of clumsiness,
Yes.
but it really is this lack of proprioception because those neural networks
They haven't
aren't
had to
being
work.
built.
Nope.
Exactly. So they're just kind of wasting away. And meanwhile, these are disciplines where precision and athleticism are really key, but also if we're jumping, injury rates are pretty high. So the
And
more that we
safety of
can-
rider, right?
Big
Like
time.
you want a horse that knows where the jump is, where they're taking off, can they do that? All of those things, especially if you're in different footing that you might be at home at a show, things are changing. That's the places that the rubber meets the road on this stuff, where if their environment supports them actually being in a healthier space that way, it's actually ironically like the reason we often don't put this stuff and do this stuff with them, like don't add another horse in their paddock, don't put obstacles, don't change the footing. The reason why, guess what? Biggest thing that I hear people say, well, they might injure themselves. Right? And it's like, oh, the irony, because guess when we get injured and your horse gets injured? When they're not used to a particular movement, a particular footing, lifting up their feet, moving over obstacles, doing things that are different, engaging in novel movement, that's when the injuries tend to actually occur. Yeah.
And when they're spending so much of their time statically.
Yep.
Because they've done lots of studies showing that any of our soft tissue structures, so our tendons and ligaments, if they are static and not flexing and under load like they're designed to be the majority of the time, the injury rates skyrocket relative to horses that are moving.
Yes.
And so we think that keeping them in a stall is helpful to prevent injury, but it actually dramatically increases injury rates.
Yes.
And so especially for performance horses and people out there showing, almost the best thing you can do is allow them to move more. The more load, the more those parts are doing what they are designed to do. Horses are meant to be moving 24/7. And so if suddenly we're stalled 16 or 18 hours a day, which is pretty typical at most boarding facilities, our rate of injury increases like tenfold or more relative to horses that are moving. So there's just so many benefits to this, and it's becoming impossible to ignore that, I think, across all disciplines. But yeah, it's so true for riders who are listening, just for your horse to have better proprioception and be utilizing their brain to know where their body is in time and space. That's priceless, because that's what keeps us safe. That's what keeps them from stumbling, tripping over their own feet, tripping over nothing at all, which happens all the time because they're checked out. But we don't realize that there's so much that we can actually do to train those neural pathways and that brain-body connection before we ever get in the saddle.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And also improve their health, improve their well-being, and reduce injury rates.
Not only that, but let's think about the nervous system state.
Yeah.
Right? So when your horses are allowed to be horses, they actually exist in a much more sustainable nervous system state. So when you go to a show, when you're doing, something different, when there's change afoot, which is often, say a paddock mate has to leave, or you need to trailer somewhere for a lesson, or there's a thing that's going on, to be able to have a horse that can actually be with those kind of transitions in a way that does not come as a detriment to their system, whether we see it or not. Because let's face it, most horses, or a lot of horses, are internalizers. You're not going to see the cost until down the road. But if your horse is not coping well with transition or change, then that cost is going to show up like, that ulcer medication you have to pay for again, the scope that you need to pay for again, the tissues breaking down, the possible colic that might happen. All of those things are sort of just like down the road from not working with the possibility of stress in this moment, because most horses are much more stressed than we would ever consider. Environment is a huge part of that. If you do have a more sensitive, like I've got a few like high sensitives here, and it's been super interesting for me to watch what they are aware of, for example, right? So even things like a clicking electric fence, for example, that we don't really think about. And most barns, I mean, how many barns do you go to and it's just constant? You hear it in the background. It's like this, little spark of electricity all the time. And that, for some horses, is just like that little bit of stress always underlying, right? Thinking about things like spatial distancing. So if we have a very small area between, say our horses are stalled, like you say, for 14 to 16 hours a day, and we have a horse that really does not like having other horses in their space while they're eating, they cannot get away far enough away from the space of the horse next to them for them to relax enough to eat in a way that doesn't put their stress levels up while they're eating. And ideally, they're in like a nice parasympathetic place when they're eating, right? Like rest, digest, they can relax. That means all of the good stuff is happening when they're digesting. But you'll see it. And these horses tend to get a bad rap because they're behavioral, they're lashing out, or, the ones you go in the stall and they're like trying to nip or kick, or they're kicking at the wall. Like we've all met those horses in stables. And a big part of it is they've got a big bubble and they cannot find a space that is comfortable to eat. My horses will literally go to opposite ends of the track. Like I'm talking like hundreds of meters apart, and they're like, oh, great. Nobody's around me, right? Like they're like, and I watch them. They'll be just flung all over the place. They don't want to eat next to each other. Sometimes they'll eat from the same hay net. But then how great is it that they can choose and they can be like, now I want to eat from the same hay net, and now I just want to be really far away from you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's so true. And it's funny that, again, we don't really consider that because we don't necessarily want to be beside the same person all the time, especially if we don't really get along with them.
Completely. What if they chew really loud,
Yeah. Heaven forbid.
Heaven forbid.
I feel like that's a straight to jail thing if you chew too loud. We can't have that. I am also a sensitive nervous system creature, so
you get it.
Nope.
Yeah. Every now and again, I look at my partner. I'm like, oh wow, when did you start chewing so loud?
It's amazing how much that sound can just stand out. Much like I'm sure the electric fence stands out to some horses.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I just realized the other day, actually, I read, and this is one that I haven't checked off yet, that the water heaters, like the floating water heaters, can literally cause electrocution in their water troughs. Not like bad, but enough shock.
But enough
to stop them from drinking.
Well, it's such a sensitive area to get shocked.
My gosh.
Too.
And I was like
the number of receptors in their muzzle.
Completely.
And even the hair, but their tongue, like, Oh my gosh.
So I read a post and it was like, you need to ground your water troughs if you're using these heaters. But I've been using one for years and I'm like, oh no, have they just been drinking and like, like, well, we need to drink, So these sorts of things, when we're thinking about like environment, it's, okay, what is happening for them and are they able to hydrate themselves as much as they need, right? At certain times of the year. Winter is just as important as summer in terms of making sure they have enough hydration. When we start to kind of piece it apart, it gets very interesting. And there's a lot of things. I remember being called out to a property and it was built right under the power lines. This is pretty common with horse properties because they're a little less expensive. If you're wanting land, this is a spot to be for your horses. Mm-hmm. And you would be amazed. You'll always get a few in the barn that it's really hard on them. It's really hard on them.
I bet.
And it's not really thought about or really talked about, this extra electricity in the air, so to speak. Environment becomes just this, okay, let's look around. What's around us? What's happening in the space? Here, they don't get a good vista, right? Horses love a vista. They love a horizon line. We don't have that here. We're surrounded by trees. So, okay, how do we work with that? That was one of the reasons I created that upper track loop, to give them a little bit of like a spot up high to kind of, okay, I'm up and out a little bit, right? So it's just very, very interesting to start to look at all these pieces and just to look around at your space, like observe how your horses exist in the space, how they use it, how much they move, where they want to be, who they want to be next to. Just even that may give you some really good clues on what small changes you can implement that are maybe not too big of a deal, but make a really big difference for your horses. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's interesting talking about kind of cumulative stress load over extended periods. They've looked at cortisol levels in horses that are reactive, that we would see acting out if they experience something stressful, relative to the stoic horses. Mm-hmm. And it's just so interesting. I feel like so many people can justify, oh, well, they're fine because they seem stoic or they're cooperative. And they found that cortisol levels, lifetime cortisol levels, are significantly higher in these stoic horses, meaning they're just internalizing the stress. And so the horses that don't allow that stress and that energy to move through their system in more active, sometimes explosive ways, the horse that's rearing and running away from the trailer versus the horse that loads, but is internally stressed out. And so I feel like that's something really critical that people don't necessarily understand. Just because a horse is doing it doesn't mean that there isn't associated stress, and that associated stress isn't having a massive physical and physiological impact on them over time. And so I think that's something that almost can help reframe the way we look at our horses, because I think we've all known the horses that are just like, absolutely not, they've got big boundaries and they're not afraid to express them. Diva sounds like she might have been one of those.
Oh, just a little. Just a titch. Just a
titch. I've had a few of those as well. Versus the ones that just, they sit there and they take it. Cumulatively, we're seeing extreme stress levels, and that's creating toxicity within their system over time. So I think it's just great to, again, like you were saying, be aware, watch our horses, see how they respond in different scenarios. And are they doing something because they're actually okay with it? Or are they doing something to please us or because they're fearful of the repercussions if they don't? Because that's the other reality of the way we keep and treat and train horses. Most of it is fear-based. So sometimes the repercussion of not doing the thing that they don't want to do, they're more fearful of that than doing the thing. So they're going to do it just because we've asked, because they're scared of what's going to happen if they don't. And it's great to start observing that and observing our state as well, because I think we were just talking about this on another episode, to see how much our nervous system state might elevate or escalate if a horse doesn't do what we ask, right? Because we kind of take it as like this great offense that they haven't done what we told them to do or what we asked them to do. And that says a lot more about us than it does about them. And so it's like, how are we managing those pieces? But it's just neat to start picking it all apart, like you said, and really observing with curiosity to see, okay, what is their natural preference? Do they grab a bite of hay and then take it outside because they can't stand to be next to the stall neighbor? Okay, well, like you suggested earlier, let's have a couple of stations so that they can go outside and eat. And then maybe they can go over here if that horse comes outside as well. There's lots of ways that we can get creative with it.
There are lots of ways, and it may sometimes be like thinking outside the box, especially if you're in a boarding scenario. There might be like, I'm gonna maybe buy some of my own hay and have it on hand to add a few extra stations. Or in the worst case scenario, it may look like finding another space for your horse to be. That has its own considerations, but sometimes there's not a lot of flexibility in how the horse keeping wants to happen. So if this feels like something that you're like, I really, really want my horse to have access to this particular thing, or more community, or more connection. Okay, what's that going to look like in the long term? And it may not be a possibility in your current scenario. That was something that happened for Diva and I multiple times before we really found what we needed. And it does take time to figure out not only your own needs, but your horse's as well, right? I want to circle back to that stoic piece, as I can't necessarily say that Diva has ever been stoic. It's not how we tend to roll, her and I. But my new gelding is incredibly stoic, and that has been a journey for me because he does not give a lot of cues at all. And I feel like I miss a lot. And I think that probably happens for many of us, where the stress cues are so subtle that we just are like, they're fine. And he most definitely was not. And his health stuff flared as a indication of that. But I pride myself on being pretty good at tracking change and noticing things. Even I was like, oh, wow, okay, that came out of nowhere, which it obviously didn't, right? So in that as well, it's a good thing when our horses are expressing what they need, even though at the time it may not feel that way. Yes. And we're like, you are altogether having too much opinions about this. But it's actually really, really helpful, because by doing so, we are avoiding some more major health stuff, because they're telling us early on that there's a problem and that they're feeling stress. And I have seen this with my gelding, where we were right in a health event before I necessarily realized that there was something wrong. A part of that being that he was quite new to me, but also that he had just become really, really good at hiding things. And this is the thing we need to realize about horses, is their survival mechanism for a lot of them is just hiding stuff. Because if we think about them in the wild, like, that's how they roll. They're like, I'm good. Everything's fine, right? Don't eat me. And so, yeah. So everything's awesome, as internally everything's falling apart. So we need to be really aware of how that might show up for our individual horse, and the smaller signs. For him, I started to see, it's not necessarily in the obvious signs that I would have expected from, say, my mares.
Yeah.
It's more like things like, his quality of his eye has changed. His eye would get hard, right? I had to start taking his heart rate of all things, because I was like, okay, are you stressed out? I can't tell. So these sorts of things, and even just at the amount he was moving and how, like, these sorts of things started to become more feedback for me. And this is what I mean by observing. And oftentimes, if we're, say, at a boarding barn, maybe we go out to the barn and right away we grab our horse, we brush them, we tack them up, we ride. And then we untack them, we give them a treat, we put them back, and off we go. And my encouragement would be, spend some time, like, factor in some time on either side of that interaction to just literally sit and observe your horse, and not necessarily in their paddock, because that creates its own dynamic, but find a place where you can just be like, hey, what's up? If they have a big enough paddock space and it feels good to just hang out in there, do that, but just watch them for a while and see, how do they like interact with their space? How's that feeling for them? How are they interacting with their neighbor? What are they noticing in the barn? Like, is there particular noises or people that they're noticing? This is how you get a lot of information about your horse. It also supports building a bond. So it deepens that sense of connection and trust that you're not just there to do this thing, that you're actually going to be there doing all sorts of other things. That might also include one day a week where you just take them out and go for a walk, and then just observe during that hand walk of like, where do they like to graze and who do they like to be by, and where, if they were leading the walk, where would they go? All of those question marks, right? We get to know our horse more deeply through that we're spending.
And it's great. You are probably at least the third or fourth person on the podcast to really emphasize the importance of that. And it's something that I see almost has lost a place in the way a lot of modern equestrians are engaging with their horses. I feel like it used to be that we would show up at the barn and be there all day and hanging out with horses and doing fun things with them, or just doing nothing with them at all, was really commonplace. And I feel like as we've shifted more towards your lifestyles, higher bills, higher stress levels, everything costing more, we spend a lot less time connecting with them. And so it's really critical, because if all I ever do is come to you and want something from you or demand things of you, and I never really check in or do things that tell you I'm interested in facilitating your happiness and well-being as well, it starts to feel a lot more transactional. And horses, they just pick up on so much more than we do naturally. I mean, we have cognition that overrides so much of our natural instinct. And I think so much of our lives we're kind of almost ignoring the instincts that we have, or overriding them in various scenarios, especially as women, I think. And horses, that's just so much sharper. So they know if you're always coming with this demanding energy, or energy where you're wanting something from them, but not ever caring or listening or understanding what they're communicating with you, they're not going to want to be the best partner for you, because you're not being the best partner for them. I feel like they're so good at picking up on all of those cues, even if you notice something. Oh, they want to go over here when you're grazing. Well, let them. So often we want to control and dictate every piece of the interaction. One of the things that I see so frequently is horses will want to engage with their muzzles, and people are, oh, that's rude. Oh, he's nippy. Oh, he's mouthy. It's like, well, no, that's actually how horses explore their world, their environment. That's how they engage with one another. So what if we just allow it and see, hey, do they just want you to tickle it a little bit? Do they just want to sniff you? Do they want to explore? Are they looking for a scratch? How do they want that interaction to go? Because so often it's not what we assume it is, but we've kind of got these overarching principles of dominance leading the way we interact with them, saying, oh, well, don't let them do that. Don't let them do this. And, oh, they can't. Oh, that's rude. Versus actually being open to what the interaction really means or really is telling us. And I feel like there's just so much power and so much beauty in that when we start tuning in with them a little bit.
Well, yeah, I love that. I mean, if we think of a friendship, if we think of like a friendship we really enjoy engaging with, it's definitely not the one where we're with someone and they're constantly telling us what we're doing wrong. Right? Like, I think fairly soon, most of us would be like, yeah, it's just like so weird. I don't want to hang out with you. Like, oh, I've got something on, you know, like
my hair that night.
Totally. Right. So this is something I think we really need to realize with our horses is if we're coming in and right off the bat, we're straight into control. We're straight into, you've got to do this. Even things like cross ties, very handy things, but incredibly controlling. They can't move their head. Obviously, this is one of the reasons we've used them, is because they're just like there. Right. And so engaging with them in different ways, like, okay, what would it look like if I didn't tie them, if I didn't cross tie them? How would our interaction change? What would that be like? It gives us a better sense of who they are and how they are. And if we're getting a lot of feedback, you know, say I'm going to put a saddle on and I'm getting a bunch of feedback around that not being a cool thing for them. And I know that you know a ton about this. I do not need to explain this. And I'm sure you see it all the time. then that's something we've got to go, okay, that's interesting. Why are they having so much trouble with this, so much stress, so much trouble, those behaviors, turning around and looking at you, trying to bite, trying to kick, like even moving away. For the stoic ones, it can be just a slightest shift of like, you know, that is important information about how they're feeling about what's happening. And when they're in something like cross ties, they can't express that on the same level as they would if we just were holding the lead rope and they could actually have the space to move away. So yeah, those sorts of things give us a lot of information. And I think the more that we can be curious about that, about how they feel in their environment, about what that looks like for them as far as how they're utilizing their space, all of that, this gives us so much information. And when we think about the relationships we love to be in, they're the ones where someone is curious about us. They're interested in how we're doing in our state and where we're at in that particular day. And they're open to the fact that we might be very different from one day to the next and feel very different in our bodies and need different things. And so can we be flexible? Can we be adaptable? You know, if I'm having a hard day in my body, can we maybe not ride today? Or can we do something different? Right?
Yeah. And I think normalizing that shift and that awareness is huge, because it's so interesting. One of the things I see routinely during saddle fittings is somebody will have me out because their horse is back sore. And we palpate and I show them all the areas their horse is sore, and I have them feel under the saddle so that they have an awareness of the amount of pressure that is localized in a spot and why we're seeing soreness and why we're seeing resistance under saddle or whatever behavioral issue is coming out. And sometimes I'll have them not ride if the horse is too sore. It's like, okay, you know what? Let's revisit in a week. Let's give them some time off. Let's do some body work. Other times I'm like, okay, well, let's hop on and just see if the immediate sort of acute signs of discomfort are gone. We're not going to do a ton, but maybe we have a little stretchy ride. And how often riders get on and are just trying to muscle this horse into the bridle. And it's like, whoa, you just saw how sore they are. Like, you know, they're struggling. Just because we fixed the saddle and made it better doesn't mean all of the existing tension and soreness has gone away. So why do we expect them to be perfect now? It's this kind of a lack of awareness that they are living beings. And just like us, I say this to people all the time. You know, I wake up and my back is killing me, or I have a headache, or my arthritis is flaring up. And guess what? I am not my best self on those days. I'm limping, or I'm, you know, feeling really uncomfortable every time I take a step or lift a saddle or lift my arm. And it's just so interesting how we have these expectations of kind of robotic-like perfection in our horses without ever taking out into consideration any of these extraneous variables. So the fact that they're already sore, the fact that it's rainy and cold, the fact that they're sleeping on the ground and have arthritis, like all of these pieces, the fact that there was a storm last night, they probably didn't have much restful sleep. Their bodies and their nervous systems are probably fatigued. It's just so interesting, the resistance that is there sometimes, or the lack of awareness that we have around the fact that
I think it reflects, it reflects on ourselves and our expectations of our own self, right? When we back that up and look at the cultural influences, even as women, let's say, you know, most of us as riders are women. This is a whole big, you know, can of worms to pop open right at the end of our time together. But maybe it's something you can chat about with someone else. But, you know, like looking at, say, like a mare in heat, right? That would be kind of like saying, okay, this mare in heat needs to work as hard as they do and as well as they do any other day of the week. And that for us is like, okay, you're on the second day of your period and bleeding, like hemorrhaging out and in pain, and get to it. Go and run that marathon. Go do that thing. That we are absolutely not meant to do that in that moment. That's the day where we want like a hot water bottle and a massage, like, and a hot bath, right? And so for our mares, same is true. It's like we need to be with the horse that shows up in that day and really try to understand what their needs are in that moment. At the end of the day, you don't lose anything by doing that. You actually gain. Here's the the irony, right? Like we think that, oh, I'm supposed to ride this many times a week and I got to keep to my schedule and I got to like make sure that I do the things and check the boxes. That does not build connection with your horse. If they're plainly speaking that they are not in a space to do the things today, the most connecting thing that you can do is say, I see you. I see that you're struggling. What can we do today that would feel really good for both of us? What can we do? And that might be a hand walk. That might be a little bit of movement in like the round pen or just wandering around. Because sometimes movement feels really good, right? That might be a little body work. Whatever that is, being curious about this being that you're in relationship with and connected to and claim to care about. And I know most of us do, but what does it look like to actually show love and care? At the end of the day, that's the biggest question I have around environment, around training, around any of these pieces. What does it look like to show love and care to this unique being right in front of me? And if we can ask ourselves that and truly answer with the most honesty possible, we're going to get a lot further with our horses than if we're staying stuck and static in this is what I've always done. This is how my instructor said to do it. And I'm just going to keep going in this way. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, I really like that. Mm. Now, I know we're short on time, but I know we wanted to talk a little bit about your Redefining Equine course. Would you mind even just giving the listeners a little brief kind of intro? Because I feel like it's a great thing to encompass a huge part of what you do on top of what we've already been discussing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, that actually ties so perfectly into that little piece that I last shared about, because very often when we're rewriting our stories with horses, I know it was the same for me. It's like I had to do quite a bit of reparation when it came to how I had been with horses for a long time. And even just like in terms of how I saw them, how I saw my relationship, the lens that I viewed it all through was definitely around dominance and control. And that was a bigger picture piece for me. It was like I had to really step back to see, oh, right, this is not great. This is actually harmful in some ways. And how do I shift that? Because it feels so deep within me. It's sort of such a deep pattern of being for me and understanding of how I am in relationship with these animals. And so this course I created essentially as an exploration of that. So lots of journaling questions, lots of exploration of how we have been and how we might want to be with horses and what a shift might look like, and just starting to drop some ideas in that might just ring a bell in terms of what next steps you might want to take with your horses to really understand this relationship differently. Yeah.
I love that. Because I think I've certainly gone through that journey as well. And it's hard. I'll be really honest. When you're suddenly facing the fact that almost everything you've learned and the way you've shown up for me my entire time with horses was fear and dominance based, it's like, whoa. And when you realize like I'm the problem, it's really kind of a harsh reality to face. Yeah. And yet
it sucks.
It does. It sucks so much. And to see all of the different times where I'd behaved in ways that I was really deeply ashamed of. And I knew I didn't have the tools to do it differently at the time. I didn't have the knowledge. And it was that like combination of being really overfaced and only knowing escalation and dominance as the tool. Yeah, you have to get a bit real with yourself. But what I can honestly say, like any self-growth journey, the more you get honest with it and the more you're like, okay, just because that's how I've done it doesn't mean that's how I need to do it going forward. And I can use the experience that I don't want to repeat as a launch pad for how I want to move forward. And as soon as you start questioning these things, it's almost like the whole world opens up to you because it's like, oh, wow. I feel like my relationships became so much more rich with horses and so much more enjoyable. And I see that for so many of my riders, they're not really enjoying it because there's so much stress on the people. And there's nothing worse than not having the tools or the knowledge or the understanding to solve the problems that are in front of you. And I think so often with horses, we are confronted with these problems that we don't really understand because they're coming from such a deep internal kind of flawed system. Like it's their nervous system, it's the way they're being kept, it's their feed, it's this, it's that, it's the other thing. And the more we can start to kind of tune in, the more satisfying those relationships can become, and the more we can take the pressure off of ourselves. Because I think that's the other big piece. A lot of the way that we classically respond to issues, it's pressure that's been put on us from our trainers or our coaches.
Totally.
Like, don't let them get away with that. You have to do this. And so it's really liberating and freeing when you start to kind of dig into those other pieces. And I love that you are offering people a way to tune in to themselves and to their horses and more harmonious ways forward, because I think that's something that we all are really looking for. If we're honest with ourselves as horse people, we all want it to feel good, and a lot of the time it doesn't if we're not showing up in those ways.
Totally well put.
Alexa, I'm so grateful for you spending this time with us today, and I can't wait to dig into more things on your episode. So thank you for being here and sharing all of your wisdom and insights. Do you have one takeaway even that you would like to leave our listeners with before we sign off today?
I think most of us come to horses because of love, right? Like there's this love there. And I think oftentimes the journey with horses is finding out what love really looks like, right? And not what care really looks like, and not. And so I would just encourage you to, not from a guilty place, not from a like self-flagellating place, but from just like a curiosity of what does love look like here? And, you know, are we there right now? Like, is that what's happening here? And just, you know, reflecting on that space and what you really truly want in your relationship with horses, because I think it's really valid. It's really important. And if you're going to spend so much time and energy and money, and you're going to be with horses in that way, wouldn't it be amazing if it felt great for all concerned, especially your horses? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. And again, Alexa is the host of the Whole Horse Podcast. So definitely like and follow her for more heart-led conversations about equine welfare and really all things horse, because the more we can improve as horse people, the happier horses will be and the more harmonious those relationships will be as well. So if this episode stirred something for you, we would love to hear your reflection. Please share it with anyone who you think would enjoy the conversation or could benefit from hearing anything that we discussed today. And until next time, stay curious, stay unbridled, and thanks for watching. Take care, everyone.
Bye, everyone.